we need to be able to literally count significant figures in a measured quantity that has uncertainty associated with it. You'll kind of see why that is. That's going to actually be, this idea of counting significant figures is going to be with us throughout the semester. So how do we do that? Well, you literally go along your measured quantity, the number for your measured quantity, and first off, any digit that is not 0 is significant. And I'll go ahead for each one of these and put an example. So for instance, if I had 12,379, so I'm going to put a check mark over top of each digit that's significant, and then I'm going to count my check marks. So can you see where there I've got, 5 check marks? So I would say there are 5 significant figures there. So anything that's not 0 is significant. I could have instead had 12.397, and again I would have 5 significant figures. Okay. The next rule, and the zeros are what kind of gets us. But if you have a 0 that's between two numbers that aren't 0, then that 0 is significant. And here's an example. How about 102.37? Okay. So I'm going to put a check mark over, according to the first rule, anything that's not a 0 is significant. So that gave me 4 significant figures. And this 0 right here is significant because it's between two digits that are not zeros. So we're back to 5 significant figures. Another example of that rule would be something like this. What if I have 72.076? All right, let's count significant figures. Those 4 digits that are not 0 are significant, and this is now significant according to this rule. So again, I'm back to, I have a lot of 5 significant figures here, don't I? Well, here's another one about zeros. If you have a trailing 0 after the decimal, now let's see what that looks like. Well, let's go ahead and put our decimal here. I'll go ahead and put 72.390000. How's that? So these zeros, do you buy this? These zeros are trailing zeros after the decimal. So those are significant. So I'm going to go ahead and put check marks over my 7, my 2, my 3, and my 9. Why? Because of the first rule. They're not 0, so they're significant figures. And now according to this rule, I'm going to go ahead and put check marks over these 4 zeros that are trailing after the decimal. So wow, I definitely have more than 5 here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 sig figs. That's a lot of sig figs. And I kind of liken or tell students that it works like this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a pounds there. I'm going to say that it was 72.390000 pounds. And can you see where this particular person, I mean, that's a heck of a scale. So if there is uncertainty out here, then the uncertainty is 0.00000 plus or minus, plus or minus point that much of a pound. So that means that those zeros trailing after the decimal were very important in relaying what sort of measuring device I used. All right. So it's about the zeros. Now this is a place where zeros are not significant. And this one works for, this one only works for small numbers. I don't know if that'll help you or not. And here's what it says. Leading zeros are never significant. Sometimes we call these placeholders. Placeholders for small numbers. And it looks like this. 0.00025. Okay, so these first 3 zeros are actually leading zeros for a small number. They're placeholders. They're important, and we need to include them if we're write the answer to a problem. Okay, but they are not significant. I'm going to go ahead and put X's over them, and I'll put check marks over 2 and 5 since they are digits that are not 0. Okay, Yeah. Now I'm going to have to come back to this one. We have another type of placeholder zero, and it's for large numbers, and it is what we call trailing zeros. There are before an implied decimal. So this is for big numbers. So for instance, I could have 125,000. 1, 2, 3, 125,000. These are examples of zeros, trailing zeros, before an implied decimal. Usually when I ask students where is the decimal here, they usually say, well, goodness, the decimal place is right there. But it's what we call implied. And usually if I put a decimal there that's implied, I'm going to go ahead and put dashes around it. Okay. So we say that the numbers the digits 1, 2, and 5, they are significant according to the first rule. But these guys, these zeros, I'm going to put question marks over them. We're going to kind of come back to this. We don't know whether it's like plus or minus 1,000, plus or minus 100, plus or minus 10, or plus or minus 1, if that kind of makes sense to you. We don't know if they're ambiguous. The word ambiguous means we don't know. So I have some examples coming up here. I'm not sure in your notes if these are filled out or not. But in order to count significant figures, we need to assume that they're not exact, they're not counted, they're not by definition, and they're measured quantities. So for instance, it looks like this. If we count sig figs, hopefully you guys would tell me 4. This is all according to the first rule, 4 sig figs. But it's the zeros that get us. So here we have some zeros. I'm going to go ahead and put check marks over the non-zero digits. Okay, those 3 are significant. And these 2 zeros are also significant. So that gives us, what, 5 sig figs? The next one, we also have some zeros to worry about, or a zero, I guess, to worry about. In this case, I'm going to put a check mark over the 2 and the 5 because they're not 0. And then this 0 is a trailing 0 after the decimal, so that is also significant. Again, somebody's telling us that the measuring device is plus or minus 0.01 is how I think of it. So we have, what, 3 sig figs there? The next one, we've got some zeros. So starting with rule number 1, these first 3 numbers, the 1, 1, 5, are significant. And these last 2 zeros are also significant because they're trailing zeros after the decimal. One more example here, so that's 5 sig figs. And then here we go, here's this one. So I can put check marks over the 2 and the 3 because they're non-zero digits. And then these guys right here, they are actually they are leading zeros. They're placeholders. They're leading zeros for small numbers. So they are not significant. I was looking for what the word was. So there's just 2 significant figures there. Now, I'm going to warn you, not warn you, but you have to include these in your answers even though they're not significant to show magnitude of the number.